Dubro Suspicion Files.
Back in 1971, we sent a probe to Mars, thinking we were just going to map a dead, crater-filled rock. But what it actually found, hidden under a massive planet-wide dust storm, were 4 mysterious spots. And those 4 spots would completely change everything we thought we knew about the red planet.
This quote right here, it just says it all, doesn't it? This was the vibe before 1971. You know, after all those decades of sci-fi dreaming about canals and Martian civilizations, our first few robotic missions sent back pictures that were, well, a huge letdown. The scientific world basically agreed Mars was a dead planet, kind of like a bigger, redder moon.
So, how did we get to this point? I mean, how did Mars go from this exciting world, maybe with intelligent life, to being written off as just some boring geological relic? Well, it's a classic story of science maybe overcorrecting a little bit. And it all happened so fast. You know, back in 1877, this Italian word canali gets mistranslated, and suddenly everyone's thinking about these grand canals built by a dying Martian civilization. That was the popular idea for decades. Then, boom, the flybys happen. Mariner 4 in 65, then Mariner 6 and 7 in 69, and all they sent back were pictures of craters. Just craters. So by 1970, the case was closed. The science was settled. Mars was dead.
So that's the world that Mariner 9 was launched into. And talk about pressure. Its sister ship, Mariner 8, had actually failed during launch. So that meant this one little probe was carrying the hopes of the entire program on its shoulders. It was literally all or nothing.
And on November 14th, 1971, it did it. After this frantic race against the Soviets, who had also sent probes, Mariner 9 fired its engines and became the very first object made by humans to ever orbit another planet. I mean, what an incredible achievement. The team at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory was over the moon. But that celebration, it was about to get cut very, very short.
Just try to imagine the scene for a second. You've just won the space race to Mars. You're ready to start this historic mapping mission. You turn on the cameras, and you see this, a blurry, featureless, orange blob. The entire planet was swallowed by one of the biggest dust storms ever seen. They called it the Red Veil. The mission was totally blind. But here's the crazy thing. This total disaster, it actually turned out to be a blessing. See, while the Soviet probes just blindly sent their landers to crash into the storm, Mariner 9 was advanced enough that it could just wait it out in orbit. And this forced patience acted like a kind of atmospheric filter, hiding almost the entire planet, except for its most gigantic, most extreme features. Because for weeks, as Mariner 9 just kept circling the shrouded planet, only 2 things could be seen through that red veil: the bright white of the south polar cap and 4 really weird dark spots poking through the dust near the equator. So the storm didn't hide the planet's biggest secret, it was practically pointing right at it.
Now, before we get to the big reveal, we have to talk about a little bit of psychology. The science team was dealing with some serious cognitive dissonance. They had this rock-solid belief: Mars is a dead, cratered world. But their screens were showing them something that just didn't fit. And our brains, they do funny things when that happens.
And this is exactly what that looks like in action. The dead planet idea was so strong that when they saw these enormous spots, their first thought was that they must be high-altitude crater complexes. They were trying to jam this revolutionary new data into their old, comfortable theory, seeing what they expected to see, not what was actually there.
But like I said, the team at JPL was patient. They just waited. And then, in early 1972, it started to happen. The dust finally began to settle. The red veil was slowly being pulled back, revealing the true face of Mars that was hiding underneath.
So, after all those weeks of guessing and fighting their own biases, the team was finally about to get its answer. What were these 4 mysterious things, the only features on the entire planet tall enough to poke through a global dust storm?
Well, here's the answer. They weren't craters, not even close. Each dark spot was a volcano, a colossal shield volcano. What they thought was a crater complex became Ascraeus Mons. The other 2 spots, Pavonis Mons and Arsia Mons. And the biggest one, the one they called Nix Olympica, was revealed to be the absolutely gargantuan Olympus Mons. This quote from Harold Masursky, one of the leaders of the imaging team, it just nails it. In that single moment of realization, the entire scientific idea of Mars just crumbled.
The dead planet was, well, it was dead. Mars was a geologically dynamic world.
And the scale of these things, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. Olympus Mons is nearly 22 kilometers tall. That is almost 3 times the height of Mount Everest. Its base is so wide it would cover the entire state of Arizona. This wasn't just a volcano, it was an absolute monster.
And discovering these giants wasn't just some cool geological fact. No, this was like finding the key that unlocked the entire operating system of the planet.
So why are they so ridiculously huge? Well, on Earth, our tectonic plates are always drifting over geological hotspots, which creates chains of smaller volcanoes, like the Hawaiian Islands. But Mars doesn't have plate tectonics. Its crust just sits there, static. So a single hotspot can just erupt in the same place for hundreds of millions of years, building one single colossal mountain.
These volcanoes were the Rosetta Stone for understanding Mars. I mean, discovering them led scientists to realize they all sit on this massive plateau called the Tharsis Bulge. And the immense weight of that bulge stretched and cracked the crust, creating Valles Marineris, the biggest canyon in the whole solar system. It was all connected. It all suddenly made sense.
All of a sudden, Mars wasn't this dead, boring, cratered world anymore. It was a world of gargantuan volcanoes, of canyons the size of continents, and, as Mariner 9 would also discover, clear, undeniable evidence that liquid water once flowed all over its surface. The planet was completely transformed right before our eyes.
And this whole revolution in our understanding happened because of this one single patient mission. Over its life, Mariner 9 sent back over 7,000 images, completely rewriting the textbooks and really setting the stage for every single rover and lander that we've sent since.
So you see, the discovery of those 4 spots didn't just solve a mystery. It created a brand new one that we are still trying to answer today. It turned Mars from a dead planet into our #1 target in the search for life. Because you have to ask, if a planet was once this geologically dynamic, with giant volcanoes, a real atmosphere, and flowing water, could it have once supported life?